Today is Wednesday, September 24th, 2014. And I wanted to begin by asking you to give us your full name, please.
Okay, my name is Selina Pagan.
Okay. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Cleveland, right on the east side at the Cleveland Clinic on the east side, and I was raised here. I went through the Cleveland public school system and everything, so I'm Cleveland born and raised.
Okay. And your heritage is?
Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican.
Yes.
What was your childhood like growing up here in Cleveland?
It's very much different. I have one sibling, my sister, who has an 8-year gap difference. So it's much different for the both of us. She was raised on the west side a lot, like her schools were in this Hispanic area. I went to schools with predominantly African American, and we totally had different lifestyles. She had to go, she barely spoke English, which was odd. She was here, but she couldn't speak it that well. I, on the other hand, I never really spoke Spanish that well. Because where I was going, everyday life at school was never Spanish, I would say. So it was different. Then getting into high school is when I got more in touch with my roots. But my family, I visited Puerto Rico plenty of times, that I understand my culture, like, and the history. I think that's one of the most important things, that I know where I'm coming from. So even though I would say there's a certain stereotype that Puerto Ricans look like or act like. It's not me, but I know everything that, like, my history and culture. When I got to high school, I would say is when, like, I started to, like, cherish it a lot more, because it was a different, like, surrounding, I would say. Kids were like, oh, you speak 2 languages and all this other stuff, so it was kind of interesting. I did some immersion trips. I went to El Salvador, and I don't know why I fell in love with the culture so much more, and it was nice. I think I really cherish my Hispanic culture a lot, so growing up is a little different. Now I'm in college, so it's my first year in college, so I'm gonna see how that works out.
So you didn't grow up speaking Spanish?
Kind of. It was always around me, but of course my parents would yell at me like, what are you doing? Speak Spanish. What are you doing? I'm not gonna even pretend to understand what you're saying until you start speaking Spanish to me. So to my parents, out of respect, and my God family, because I think that's really big in our culture, is God family, I spoke Spanish to them. I think my last couple years, my Spanish has gotten a lot worse, just because of my surroundings and everything, I would say.
Since you say your heritage is Puerto Rican, what part, or what do you remember, or why do you identify as that part of you that's Puerto Rican, like growing up, as you think back? What were some of maybe the traditions, or even language, or anything that you can say, well, that was because we were Puerto Ricans, we did this?
Yeah, well, it's a little funny. My parents are both entrepreneurs, and as soon as I was born, my mom kind of dropped me off to my godmother's house, and that's kind of how, like, a lot of the culture I got was more from my God family. They're from a different part of Puerto Rico, so it's kind of funny. I see a couple different parts of the island, and it's a small island, but it's just so, like, there's so many different parts to it and different history of each part. When I was growing up with my God family, I was in the church a lot. My godmother was really into the church. I think religion plays a big part of it. The food, my godmother taught me a lot about traditional foods, and one of the things with traditional foods and Puerto Rican, like, food, like with the cornmeal and things like that, sorullos, like, they take time. Things like just traditional food always takes so much time to make, and so it's a lot different. I would say it's the music a lot too. I love the music, but I'm not a fan of the new, like, reggaeton and things like that. I love the classic, like, my godfather still has little tapes of really old music, and I like that. I think it's so, like, rich and just the way it sounds. And growing up with my God family, it was just family get-togethers every week and things like that. My family is so much smaller here because a lot of them are in Puerto Rico, my actual family, my like nuclear family. And my parents weren't really like that. They would show up to the God family parties, so it was a lot different. My parents seemed more like Americanized, but my God family was total opposites. My godfather and my godmother would sit there and pick the beans out of the little, what are those called? They would just sit there on Saturdays and pick beans out of the, like, I'm not even sure what they call them. It was just funny to me. It was different. But I really grew out of that as I got older, which I don't enjoy, because I miss those kind of small root kind of things.
Yeah. What are some of your, you mentioned that in high school you sort of became more aware or more in touch with your Hispanic roots. What were those things? Like, what made you be a little more aware of that?
The high school I went to actually had a heritage class. So it was a Hispanic heritage class for Spanish-speaking students. The idea was that many of the students that live in the States, they're embarrassed to speak it in front of their, like, to be in a regular class, Spanish class, with a bunch of kids that had never spoken the language. But also the class really helped kids who spoke Spanish already but didn't speak it well. So it kind of like advanced their Spanish and things like that. With the Heritage Spanish class, there were many like trips that we did and as a group. And I think one of the biggest things for Hispanics is family. And at one point, like at a lot of points, the group became a family. So I think that was really important. It kind of became my circle of friends. A majority were from my Hispanic heritage class. So that kind of made it just made it a lot nicer because we could relate. There's certain jokes you say as a Hispanic that only Hispanics will get. And it was nice seeing like that group of friends that I could just yell from down the hall and they would understand what I was saying.
Can you remember some of that? Can you give us some?
We were a little silly and we were teenagers, so it would be ridiculous things, but it was just catching each other in the halls. And I had a really close friend who was Guatemalan. So in Guatemala, there's like this word for somebody who's always joking around is a chaping. So like we would yell down the hall these little nicknames, and it was just things like that. The Hispanic heritage class wasn't just Puerto Ricans, so it kind of gave you a little feel for other cultures, and we would go out to little restaurants and eat many different places. And we went to Chicago for a weekend every year to go to different like neighborhoods there. They were really diverse, so that helped a lot.
And this was throughout high school?
Well, the high school is in the east side of Cleveland. It's called St. Martin de Porres High School. It's a Catholic school with a corporate work study program. So we only had classes 4 days a week, and then we were kind of sent to internships basically to pay for our tuition. It was a very different high school, very different.
What has been one of the most memorable times of you being here in Cleveland?
Relating to Hispanic culture or just anything?
It could be anything.
Anything? Oh, that's so hard. I say I had a pretty happy life, but I would have to say one of the nicest parts would be like every Hispanic girl's coming of age moment was my quinceañera, which is here in Cleveland. It wasn't traditional. I don't know why I used to sway away from tradition, but it was my quinceañera. It was a time when my whole family came together. My parents eventually got divorced, so that was a time where they were working really hard at coming back together to make us a family again. So that was very nice. Wait, I just said something and okay. What has been since that growth that you've had since high school and sort of
developing this pride of being Latina, Hispanic in the state. What is your involvement now with the Latino community?
It's funny that you asked that. I'd say my story right now is a lot different from others. I'm 18 years old. I just graduated high school. And I actually I'm the administrative assistant here at the Northeast Ohio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, which is also known as a Hispanic Business Center. So I work at this nonprofit, and what I deal with is a lot of community development. So right now, some of my focus is on we're redeveloping the neighborhood to call it La Villa Hispana. So that's, I don't want to say I dedicated my life to it just yet, but that's one of the main focuses of my life right now. Right now, next week my sister is in charge of the merchant group for La Villa Hispana, but it wasn't it wasn't very concrete. It was very abstract. So now I'm taking the lead on handling the merchant group, and then I also work for the Hispanic Alliance, which is a nonprofit, right? That's in the same building as here, actually. So with that, I work a lot with kind of like branding and marketing La Villa Hispana. It's so odd. It's a lot of work for someone like me because I just started college. And so I don't know what it's going to be like just yet. So far it's gone smoothly. But I just got out of class and came here. So that's kind of my life right now. And it's just constantly keep going. But my goal is to transform this area into, it's not for tourism, it's not for business, it's for everyone else. That's what everybody else wants. Mine is like cultural preservation. I don't want to lose, I want to have a location where people can come and they can understand the way we do things. There's been talk about like having like a market, and in those markets on those certain days there'll be someone teaching a traditional dance, a traditional dish, or things like that, so that the kids don't lose it, because that's the thing, we lose it, and it's just like a culture loss, and it's sad because I've gone through it, and I wish I didn't, because the roots are what really matters. It's preserving that culture. So my biggest goal is to transform the area. I mean, we'll always have those commercial businesses and those big franchises, but I think it's really important for us to try to have something that's ours. I mean, you see it a lot in Lorraine, or you see it in Painesville with tons of Mexicans. So it's kind of finding our place, and it's not only for Puerto Ricans, even though the area has a lot of Puerto Ricans. It's the Hispanic village for a reason. We want to be very inclusive, and we just want to share, just keep sharing and spreading the culture.
Great. I know you're young, you're only 18, but what has been your proudest moment so far?
I'd have to say it's hard because, yeah, I graduated. I mean, that should be a goal for everyone. I graduated. But to me, it's the next step, and I think coming to work every day, which is not usual for kids my age, or not kids, but young professionals. I wouldn't even know what to call it anymore. It's quite different for me, but every time I meet someone new, and I meet someone and I network with them and things like that, just knowing that I'm only 18 and I'm talking to executive directors and CEOs, it just empowers me a little bit more, and that's nice because I also have my family who, like, they're small business owners and they don't ever see that kind of thing, and they see their daughter, just 18, doing my thing, I would say. So I think every time I just make a new connection with someone in a networking environment, I think those are my proudest moments, just because of my age, and I'm a Latina. It's just so many different aspects. I'm young, I'm a woman, I'm Latina. There's a lot to it.
Yes, absolutely. What does Ohio mean to you?
Not only do I love being Puerto Rican and Hispanic and Latina, I do love my city. Like Cleveland, I stayed in Cleveland. I go to Cleveland State University. But Ohio overall, I think it's a great state, but I love Cleveland as well. I'm a little biased. I love Cleveland. But I've gone to many different, I think a couple weekends ago I went to the Amish country. I love things like that. You can do that in Ohio. I also I like to go hiking. There's like hiking hills, and there's multiple areas. You can do all kinds of things. You can go to Lorraine. There's things to do everywhere. I think people take it for granted a lot, but there's a lot to do in Ohio. And I really appreciate living here. Not only that, but there's also like you don't see too many tornadoes, you don't see tsunamis or hurricanes or things like that. So I appreciate the location, the geographic location.
Great, excellent. I imagine that you work with the Latino population and maybe the immigrant community. What advice would you give to newcomers to this area?
So I would have to say, I think the biggest thing is, I don't want to say putting yourself out there, but it's always, I think this area is very like, we appreciate people who come in and they want to get to know us and they don't judge a book by its cover. This area has had a rough history over the last couple of years. It's a rough neighborhood. But when you get into the internal parts of the people who own the businesses and what they want to do with the neighborhood, it's a really good positive message that we're trying to send. So we appreciate people coming into the business, especially what we try to do is get new businesses that are owned by Hispanic or Latinos. And we want them to see the potential we have and how good that we are and the people that are amazing here. Like, these people mean well and they work so hard that, you know, having more friends and having it's like that relationship with everyone, it's really nice feel. I think it's really important and people don't do that nowadays. I think people come in, go get what they need and leave. They don't. I think that's one of the important, more basic parts of it. I think we need to start building relationships. People like to keep to themselves now, so.
Yeah. Now, this might be a hard question because you're so young, but if you see yourself like in 10, 20 years, 30 years, what message would you like to give to a younger generation or your kids or your grandkids?
I would like to give a generation now, or a message now to my generation, because I have many friends that don't understand, that they don't get the way things do, and I think that they lose themselves. There's so many things that are just so distracting. I think it's all distractions, and we don't focus enough on ourselves. One of the issues I think people have now, especially younger, like teenagers, they're so in a rush to grow up. They're so, like, I know that was me at some point, but I think my life went a whole different direction. But being one with your family, I think there's so much, the kids love to go hang out with their friends, and it just drives me nuts when I see kids walking around the streets. Like, go home, go to your families, like, enjoy that time. And I understand that a lot of the people I know and a lot of people in the area, the family thing doesn't work. I don't know why, but it's not a like healthy family. And so kids do, you know, leave home for certain reasons, but you have to find that family because you need that support system. I think family is one of those important things, whether you have it or not, you have to find one. And you have to find a place to be you. And I think it's a place where you go home at night and you just breathe. Just be one with your family. Do what you like to do with your family. Because you'll never get another family. Family is just one thing. So, I don't know. I think family is the most important message, I would say.
Is there anything else that you would like to add to this interview that I haven't asked?
No. I think I'm okay. I think you asked really good questions. Thank you.